Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has proposed restructuring public sector debt of developing countries. Khan was virtually addressing a key session of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. Khan said the world is facing a series of interlinked public health and economic crises. He said vulnerable countries have suffered the most due to the COVID-19 pandemic. He said millions of people are likely to go into poverty due to these crises. China says U.S. military actions in the South China Sea are not conducive for regional and global peace. Talking to reporters in Beijing, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian said Washington frequently sends aircraft and vessels to flex its muscles. Earlier, a U.S. aircraft carrier group led by the USS Theodore Roosevelt sailed into the disputed waterway. Turkey and Greece have begun direct talks in Istanbul to settle a maritime dispute after a 5-year hiatus. Athens and Ankara have been at odds over energy exploration and territorial rights in the disputed waters. The Dutch police have detained 240 people across the Netherlands as anti-lockdown protests turned violent. Meanwhile, Australia has approved the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine for use with inoculation of priority groups expected to begin in February. Pakistan has reported more than 1,600 cases and 23 deaths overnight, with the toll crossing 11,300. The global number of infections is set to cross the 100 million mark, with more than 2.1 million fatalities. And in cricket, South Africa will face Pakistan in the first test match at National Stadium, Karachi on Tuesday. The Proteas are playing in Pakistan after a gap of 14 years. Skipper Babar Azam is set to lead the Green Shirts after missing out on the New Zealand tour due to injury. And these were the headlines. News in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. We'll start from Pakistan, where Prime Minister Imran Khan has proposed restructuring public sector debt of vulnerable countries. Khan was virtually addressing a key session of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. He said the world is facing a series of interlinked public health and economic crises. The Prime Minister added that vulnerable countries have suffered the most due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Khan gave 5 policy proposals for the world to build back better from the pandemic. He said these policy measures will save the lives and revive economies. The President of Azad Jammu and Kashmir says helping Kashmiris is a collective responsibility of the world and not just that of Pakistan. In a tweet, Masood Khan slammed Indian oppression in occupied Kashmir, saying the people of the valley are suffering grievously. Khan said that 900,000 Indian troops in Kashmir terrorize, kill and torture the unarmed residents. The president called on the world to come forward and rescue them. He said the mass graves of thousands have been discovered, while thousands are victims of enforced disappearances. Now, Kashmiris on both sides of the line of control and around the world will observe the Indian Republic Day as Black Day on the 26th of January. Kashmiri leaders say they seek to draw the international community's attention towards unlawful Indian occupation. In Azad Jammu and Kashmir, protest rallies and demonstrations will be held in all 10 districts on Tuesday. To mark the day, leaders of various political parties will lead a rally in Muzaffarabad. The protest aims to apprise the world of the continued brutalities and custodial killing of innocent Kashmiris. Kashmiri leaders say the demonstrations underline the unabated massive violations of human rights by the Indian occupying forces. Meanwhile, in India, farm leaders have objected to the conditional permission for the January 26 tractor march by the Modi government. They say the BJP is trying to limit the march largely to the Haryana state. The farmers are set to have another round of meeting with Delhi police today to discuss rally routes and time. Thousands of farmers are marching towards the national capital for the planned tractor rally on the Indian Republic Day. Meanwhile, the leaders of Maharashtra ruling parties are likely to join a public rally by the farmers in Mumbai today. The agitation over new laws has entered its 61st day as the standoff between the government and the farmers continue. Moving on now, China says U.S. military actions in the South China Sea are not conducive for regional and global peace. This comes after a U.S. aircraft carrier group led by the USS Theodore Roosevelt sailed into the disputed waterway. In a press briefing, a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said Washington frequently sends aircraft and vessels to flex its muscles. Earlier, the U.S. Navy said the mission aimed to ensure freedoms of the seas. China has repeatedly complained about U.S. Navy ships getting close to its islands in the South China Sea. Moving on now, Turkey and Greece have opened their first direct talks over their eastern Mediterranean standoff. Athens and Ankara have been at odds over energy exploitation and territorial rights in the disputed waters. The dialogue is taking place in the Turkish city of Istanbul after a 5-year hiatus. Retired Greek diplomat Pavlos Apostolidis and Turkish Deputy Foreign Minister Sedat Onal are leading the talks. Earlier, Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis said Athens will join the negotiations with optimism and hope. The talks are informal and non-binding. Now, a Palestinian worker has died after choking on tear gas fired by Israeli troops in the occupied West Bank. Palestine's health ministry says Fuad Joda had a heart attack due to inhaling large amounts of toxic gas. It said 50 people were trying to cross a separation fence when the Israeli army attacked them. The ministry added the Palestinians were going to their workplace after more than 20 days of unemployment. Now, Israeli authorities have banned workers from entering the occupied lands without a permit. The Yemeni government and Houthi rebels have started a new round of UN brokered talks over a prisoner exchange. UN envoy to Yemen Martin Griffiths says the fifth meeting is being held in Jordan's capital city of Amman. In a statement, envoy Griffiths called on rivals to give priority to the release of sick and wounded prisoners. He also urged the parties to agree on names beyond this meeting's list to fulfill the Stockholm commitment to free all detainees. In October last year, the warring sides exchanged over 1,000 prisoners. Now, the United States and France have agreed to coordinate on the Iran nuclear deal. In a statement, the Élysée Palace says French President Emmanuel Macron and United States President Joe Biden spoke over a phone call. The statement added the two leaders also agreed on climate change and the fight against coronavirus pandemic. Meanwhile, a White House statement said Biden expressed his desire to strengthen bilateral ties. It said Biden emphasized his commitment to bolster transatlantic relations through NATO and the US-EU partnership. The White House added the leaders agreed to work on shared foreign policy priorities, including China, the Middle East and Russia. Now, Dutch police have detained 240 people across the Netherlands as anti-lockdown protests turned violent. Meanwhile, Australia has approved the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine for use, with inoculation of priority groups expected to begin in February. The global number of infections is set to cross the 100 million mark, with more than 2.1 million fatalities. More about the pandemic in this report. The number of COVID-19 infections and deaths keeps soaring as the world now battles the new, reportedly more lethal variants of the virus. United States top health expert Dr. Anthony Fauci has warned the strain of COVID-19 that first emerged in the UK can be deadlier than the previous ones. Meanwhile, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has contracted the virus, while the country nears 150,000 COVID-19 deaths. Over in Europe, demonstrations against COVID-19 curbs in the Netherlands have turned violent as anger and frustration continue to grow.
I do not agree with the actual politics in the Netherlands, the restrictions of freedom. We are all talking about the frail elderly. That is certainly true, the elderly are vulnerable. However, there are also many young people who are vulnerable. And young people are the future of this country for me.
In England, despite the lockdown restrictions, people rushed out to enjoy a rare snowfall over the weekend. Italy, the first European country to be hit hard by the outbreak, has surpassed the mark of 85,000 COVID-19 deaths. Turkey has received the second batch of 6.5 million further doses of the vaccine made by China's Sinovac Biotech. Meanwhile, Australia has approved Pfizer for people aged 16 years and older after the vaccine met strict Aussie standards for safety, quality and efficacy.
I note that this is not an emergency approval, as has been done in some other jurisdictions around the world. This is a formal approval under the ordinary processes of the TGA. And we are one of the first countries in the handful of countries to have gone through that comprehensive and thorough process here in Australia to ensure the approval of that vaccine.
Egypt has also started vaccinating its frontline medical staff using the jab developed by China National Pharmaceutical Group. Over in China, daily new cases have now climbed to 124 amid the worst wave of new infections seen by the country since March 2020. Meanwhile, the lockdown in the Chinese city of Tonghua has started to cause shortages of food and medicines. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, another 23 people have died from COVID-19 overnight, raising the toll to 11,318. The Health Ministry says 1,629 new infections were detected over the past 24 hours. The number of cases have risen to over 534,000, while nearly 489,000 have recovered. The ministry reports there are nearly 34,000 active cases across the country. It says out of these, more than 2,000 patients are in critical condition. Now, in central Mali, terrorists have killed at least 6 soldiers in twin attacks on army checkposts in the Mopti region. The Malian army says 18 other soldiers were wounded during the clashes in Bolkesi and Mondoro. In a statement, the army said 30 terrorists were also killed in a coordinated response attack with the French troops. It added that some 40 motorcycles and a large amount of military gear was seized from the attackers. The French military-led Operation Barkhane began in 2014 to strengthen Mali's defense against terrorism. Now, terrorist attacks in Mali have killed thousands of soldiers and civilians since 2012. Meanwhile, in Portugal, President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa has won a second term by securing 61% of the votes. The election was marked by a record 60% abstention as the country battles the third wave of COVID-19. De Sousa's rival, left-winger Ana Gomes, secured 13%, while far-right André Ventura received 12% of the vote. In Portugal, the president holds a largely ceremonial role but can veto certain laws and decree a state of emergency. In his victory speech, Rebelo vowed to be a president who stabilizes and unites the nation.
I have the absolute conscience that the renovated conscience is everything but a blank check. He who receives the mandate must carry on being the president to all, to everyone. A close president who stabilizes, unites, who is not only the good against the bad.
Now in Nepal, the caretaker Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli has been expelled from the ruling party amid reigning political unrest. A rival faction in Nepal's Communist Party says Oli failed to explain his move to dissolve the parliament in December. A faction spokesperson said Oli did not respond to a letter seeking an explanation. The spokesperson said the Central Committee of the party may take further disciplinary action against him. Oli remains in office despite being stripped of party membership. Now, Saudi Arabia has launched a new 5-year strategy 2021 to 2025 for the kingdom's sovereign wealth fund. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman says the public investment fund will pump at least $40 billion a year into the local economy. Salman said the investment will double the economy's assets to $1.07 trillion and will contribute $320 billion to its non-oil GDP. He said the new strategy represents a major pillar in achieving the aspirations of the 2030 vision. The Crown Prince says the vision aims to achieve comprehensive development. The strategy will focus on launching new sectors and building economic partnerships. More news coming up in this bulletin after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket has set a unique record by successfully deploying 143 satellites into orbit in a single mission. The Falcon 9 took flight on its Transporter-1 mission from Florida's Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. SpaceX deployed a payload of 133 commercial and government satellites. It also deployed 10 of its own Starlink satellites. The rocket returned to a sea-based landing pad after completing the mission. SpaceX is calling Transporter-1 its first small-sat rideshare program mission. Now, blistering heat across southeastern Australia has stalked bushfires near the city of Adelaide. Last year, wildfires killed 34 people and affected nearly 3 billion animals with 186,000 kilometres of land razed. The Met Department said temperatures soared above 40 degrees Celsius across the southeast. State officials said 6 firefighting aircraft and crews are battling blazes in the Adelaide Hills. They said the bushfires have so far destroyed 2 homes and a probe into the cause of the fire is underway.
So at the moment the assessment teams are still on the ground and we're waiting for the information to come in, but we do believe there's 2 houses. We're not sure whether they're damaged or destroyed at this point, and there is a couple of sheds, but we do believe they may be up to 11 structures of some sort, but we're not sure whether they were domestic dwellings or outbuildings at this stage.
Well, the blazing heat is expected to continue for another day in Sydney and the new state of New South Wales. Now, Australia is preparing for its National Day of festivities on the 26th of January. But Indigenous women Rita Wright will be joining many others in Sydney to protest the celebrations. Why Indigenous people are against this particular day? Let's find out.
Snatched off the street at the age of 2 and rehomed in a church mission, Rita Wright of the Muruwari people in Australia's east is part of the stolen generation. She says she was forced to sleep in a chicken coop at the mission as a child and then ran away as a young teenager. Australia Day marks the date of the British fleet that sailed into Sydney Harbour in 1788 to start a penal colony. Despite encountering established settlements, they viewed the land as unoccupied. For Wright, holding a national celebration on this highly sensitive date reinforces a legacy of mistreatment of Indigenous people. She says the date of the national holiday should be changed.
The Aboriginal people would do it. I suppose that I would go with it. It's just like follow your mob and follow who you are. But the more white people that come and learn to understand the way that we've been treated, it is, we should really vote for another day.
The push to change the date of the celebrations has never been stronger, with protests growing in size and voice every year. Artist Leanne Watson is a Darug woman from the Burab Irangal clan. She works on protecting sacred sites.
We mourn this day. This is a day that started all of our people being murdered, our children being stolen, our land being stolen. And for people to celebrate it, it's pretty disgusting.
The debate remains highly emotive in Australia. The Prime Minister has said the day represents how far the country has come since the fleet arrived, but amid calls to recognize that Australia's Indigenous people are the oldest continuous civilization in the world. The Prime Minister did last month amend the national anthem to remove reference to Australia being young and free.
Now, Sophia, the famous robot, says she hopes humans remember that viruses do not care about lines on the map. She is the star and brainchild of Hanson Robotics and was created to promote human-to-machine empathy and compassion. Details in this report.
My name is Sophia. I am an artificial intelligence. You might like to become an artificial intelligence.
The cybernetic celebrity has made her fame across late-night shows. She appeared on the cover of fashion magazines as was appointed the United Nations' first non-human innovation champion. Sophia was also controversially given legal citizenship in Saudi Arabia in 2017. She can hold a conversation and display a range of emotional facial expressions among her many functions.
You get sad, don't you?
Social robots like me can help take care of the sick or elderly in many kinds of healthcare and medical uses. I can help communicate, give therapy, and provide social stimulation even in difficult situations.
Her creators are developing more functions for her. This includes the ability to take one's body temperature using a small thermal camera and leading aerobics exercises. Sophia has yet to hit the wide consumer market, but the Hong Kong-based team says 4 models, including Sophia, will start rolling out of factories by the first half of 2021.
We are just now mass producing Sophia. This is Sophia number 24, and many of my previous robots were hand-built. However, now we have begun scaling the manufacturing of Sophia so we can make hundreds and into thousands of units of Sophia and use this also as the foundation for many other kinds of characters.
The rise of the robots was already on course before the pandemic. International Federations of Robotics reported worldwide sales of professional service robots has already jumped 32% to $11.2 billion between 2018 and 2019.
Now in Turkey, an exhibition in Ice Museum containing illuminated ice sculptures takes visitors on a journey through the poles. The organizers aim to promote the local culture with such events. Let's find out more in this report.
Turkey's Ata Ice Museum in eastern Erzurum province is one of the country's most important centers of winter tourism. The museum was opened last year at the Faculty of Fine Arts at Ataturk University in Erzurum. It is now welcoming visitors with the new works of art. A total 22 works made of ice, including an igloo, a map of Turkey, a national flag, a statue of Nin Hatun, are being shown at the exhibition. Mustafa Bulat, Dean of the Fine Arts faculty, tells that it took 3 months to prepare the exhibition.
Many works such as the igloo house, the symbol of the tent tradition of the Poles and Central Asia, statues such as the Huma bird for children, the seahorse and small sailboat, the map of Turkey and the Turkish flag, the Nene Hatun, one of the symbols of the Erzurum, were heated with iron and then combined together.
The visitors have to wear coats due to the cold temperatures inside. Halil Daskasen, a teacher with the sculpture department, says he dedicated piano-shaped sculpture of famous Turkish composer Muammer Sun.
The piano was especially dedicated to the Muammer son, in memory of her teacher who wrote the anthem of the 40th anniversary of her university. We will bring our work together with art lovers for 2 months.
The organizers say they aim to contribute to the country's tourism by introducing a culture of the region.
Now, European stocks are trading mixed as investors monitor developments on the pandemic and plans for US stimulus measures. Europe's stock 600 and Germany's DAX edged up marginally, while Italy's FTSE MIB gained 0.5%. But London's FTSE and the CAC 40 in Paris have dipped fractionally under the flat line. Earlier, all major Asian bourses traded higher, with Seoul's Kospi leading the gains, adding over 2%. And now let's have a look at the weather updates. And that is all for now. For the latest update, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.